All right, so this looks pretty intimidating. Lots and lots of shapes, lots of things to do. But when you think of it as just cutouts of paper, and as long as you don't have a stroke on it, an outline, you can augment your shapes by layering lots of different types, right? So for instance, if I want to make the shape of this hairline, what can I do? I can make a triangle, right? I can use the triangle tool. And I draw with that. And then I'm going to immediately change its color by double clicking, and I'm going to click on that color, right? And then I'm going to transform it. If I want it exactly 100%, vertical, I can hold down Shift and that will lock it to certain angles. I'll show you that again when I'm rotating. So if I hold down Shift, it will do exact angles versus just freehand. It's a little bit harder. I could also just right click and flip it through free transform, flip it vertically, right? But now I want to warp it. So you'll also see these little purple lines appear sometimes. Those are what are called guidance lines. That will show me what the center is of the other vector shape. So if I'm trying to line it up right in the middle, those guidance lines, you see them? Shows me when it lines up. And then if I warp it, I can try to bend out a curve on both sides. And we're not going for perfection here. And then I can bow it up there. Then hit return. Now if I want to go back and warp it a little bit more, it's just Command T, right click inside, warp, just like we were doing with exercise 1. And I can play with it a little bit. Till I'm happy with it and how it kind of flows with the curve. And I can do it with the other side. Now there are ways I can make this absolutely match. I can even bring down kind of guidance using the move tool and dragging on your ruler with Command R. You'll get to see your rulers. And I can really line these up exactly. But I just want you to get a sense of how we control these attributes. And to get some practice at it. So we're not looking for perfection, and actually professional emojis are not perfectly symmetrical, even when they try to be, because they're just vectors. So now, how can I see what it would look like? I can just turn off that onion skinning layer, click on a different layer, right? And I'll see how those shapes line up. And I can always keep working with it, right? This is all about practice. Transforming, pushing it around like cookie dough. I'm going to make it a little more shallow. Hit return. All right, so now how can I make this a better workflow? This onion skin layer that's at 20%, that's kind of showing me where the eyes are and the other attributes, I am going to lock it. We haven't really locked a layer before. So you select it and then you click on the padlock. What that will do is, even though I can see it, I can turn it on and off. It will keep me from accidentally selecting it or working on it or transforming it, right? So now I'll always be working underneath it. And you want to work from big general shapes to small specific shapes. So now here's actually one of the harder tasks. How do I do these things which are so common in vectors? They're called rounded rectangles. So how can I do that with just vector shapes? Well, we're never going to use the line tool. You're going to find the line tool is not what you want. That's for strokes. We're not using strokes. Instead, for any kind of linear element, you're going to want to use the rectangle tool. So if I just do a rectangle, that's roughly the size, length, and width of the mark I want to make. And then I'll go ahead and make it a dark color. I can always change it later, right? So I can see it clearly. And then if I right-click on it, right, notice it has no stroke. As long as you turned off that stroke property early, all your new shapes won't have it. You won't have to worry about it. If I Command-T, right-click, warp it, can I round these edges out? I can, but it's going to be a little awkward. Right? And I have to be careful not to round the other side out. So I can kind of round them out like that, hit return. And notice that didn't create any new anchor points. It just turned that straight vector path into a curve. And now I can warp the whole thing and try to make it into the arc I want for, let's say, the eyebrow. But you'll have a slightly weird shape, right? It becomes kind of a banana shape. So this is why I say this is one of the more challenging shapes. So what's a better way to do it? Still just using these basic vector shape tools. Well, you can make perfect circles. Computers are very good at making perfect mathematical shapes, right? So I'm going to hold down Shift now as I use the ellipse tool. And I'm going to make a perfect circle. I'm going to make it nice and dark so I can see it clearly. Then I'm going to use the Move tool, and I'm going to move it to the edge. And I accidentally added it to my other layer. Here we go. So this is going to be teaching you a few skills, and it's a little technical. But if you start the circle and then hold down Shift, right, it will make it a perfect circle. But if you hold down Shift first and then start drawing the circle, which is what I just did before, it will add it to the vector path before, which is called a compound path, which is another skill I'm going to be teaching you. But first, let's just learn how to make perfect circles. So now I'm going to take that perfect circle, I'm going to move it to where I want. Let's say it's the eye, or let's say it's the edge of this eyebrow. So I'm going to transform it, shift it smaller so it fits. Okay. Now I'm going to duplicate it, Command J, it will duplicate the vector, move it to the other end, and now I'm going to make a rectangle just like I did before. And I'm going to transform it, tilt it, right click, well, let's move it first, use the Move tool, and now Command T to transform, right click to warp, and I just need to line it up with those circles, because those circles will give me my edges. So you're going to get a lot of practice with the warp tool, which is really, really helpful. And you'll make some mistakes with it, just like with rolling out bread dough or cookie dough. Sometimes you can overdo it and you get wonky shapes, right? So then you start over. But that's a way you can get a pretty clean, rounded rectangle curve, kind of a macaroni shape. Now there's a little, if you get really obsessive, right, there's a little jog there. So how can I fix that? Well, I Command T, I warp, and I'm just going to bring that corner in the tiniest bit. So it's nice and clean. Okay, now each of those are on separate vector paths, right? But what if I wanted to merge them all together? while still having maximum flexibility. Instead of putting them into the same path, what I can do is hold down Shift or individually Command and select all three of them. And then click on the folder to group them. And I can even name the group Eyebrow, if I want to be really organized, right? And then how can I make a copy of that eyebrow? How do I duplicate it? Yeah, because Command J dot only works on individual layers or individual selections. It also works on whole layer groups. So Command J, now I have an eyebrow copy. Now if I do Command T to that whole folder, I can flip that horizontally and have an eyebrow over here. That's also made up of two circles and a curved rectangle. Now if I use my onion skin layer, I'll see that the eyebrows are a little bit different. So this one, this layer group, I'm going to tilt, but it's the exact same one, it's just tilted a little bit. So you'll actually see a lot of this repetition. In fact, it looks like this emoji designer for this expression simply took this eyebrow in this orientation, duplicated it, and then just moved it all over. I want the whole folder though. So make sure auto select is turned off here so you can really control it. Yep, you see how they match each other exactly? So there's a lot of copy paste in vector design. In fact, it's not that different to then duplicate it again, Command J, and then move it up for this eyebrow. And then Command T to tilt it. And it looks like I just need to make it just the tiniest bit bigger. And then, how can I get that to match on the other side? Command J, Command T, flip horizontal by right-clicking inside the box, and then just moving it over. So let's see what we've got so far. These are our shapes. Now I want a sly fox. So this is a tricky little shape. How can I get that? I'm going to build it near the back. So remember, whenever you add a vector shape, it will build it on top of the layer you've selected. So instead of always building things on the very top and then kind of pushing them down through the layers, sometimes you can click on the layer you want to build on top of. So I'm going to make another triangle. There we go. It's already filled with the right color. I'm going to free transform it. Going to rotate it. Actually, I'm not even going to rotate. I'm going to go right to warp. And then I'm just going to drag its point over to the side like that. It would be difficult to match it exactly. And so again, we're not going for perfection. Not like matching their emoji design would somehow be perfection. But we're trying to get a good sense of how these shapes are created. Right? So that will work for my fox. Now if I want to duplicate this ear on the other side, right? I select that layer, Command J, Command T, right click inside and say flip horizontal. And then I can move it over. And to lock it, you can see those little purple lines. That will show me when I'm matching. And I can decide, you know what, I like that. I like how the eyebrows going over the edge, so I'm going to turn auto select back on to select not the layer, but the group. I'm going to select this eyebrow group and just move it over a little bit so it's overlapping with the edge. Okay. What else do I need? I need eyeballs. So I'm going to make a new ellipse. So far I've only used rectangles, triangles, and circles. If I wanted them to be a perfect circle, I start the ellipse and then I hold down Shift. And I can choose the color.